Welcome to X-Rays, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. I'm Miles, and I'm back with our dear friend Ian Erskine to talk about a topic that affects every organization, whether you're running a global company, a growing business, or even leading a small team working remotely. When people talk about quality, they often think about products, services, or certifications, but what if the real measure of quality starts much closer to home? What if it begins with the way people work, how knowledge is shared, the culture that's created, and even how an organization shows up within its community? So, Ian is here to help us understand exactly that. With more than 40 years of experience working across industries globally, he's a passionate advocate for continuous professional development, total quality management, knowledge management, corporate governance, sustainability, and helping organizations achieve sustained success through their most valuable resource, their people. So, without any further delay, here's the Managing Director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip. Good morning, Ian.
And good morning to you, Miles. Welcome once again, and hello to all our viewers. And yes, it's lovely to be here, and I hope you had a wonderful weekend, and everyone the same. And looking forward to the next couple of episodes because it's very much focused not just on people, it's very much focused on knowledge
Mhm.
and the protection of that knowledge, which has become even more challenging because of technology. But
Yes.
yeah, so it's going to be a very exciting episode, this one, and then the next couple of ones where we talk about how we review everything on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
And then the final one is possibly is going to cap it all off, which is
Yes.
learning, personal learning, and accelerating continuous improvement on an ongoing basis. So,
Uh-huh. Yes, looking
in
forward
this,
to that already. Thank you again, Ian,
yes.
for joining us. So, for this week, we're exploring this fascinating topic. As you said, exciting. This topic is becoming more relevant by the day. How the quality of an organization is directly influenced by its infrastructure, work environment, culture, community standing, and increasingly how it manages people working from home. With hybrid work becoming the norm and technology evolving rapidly, organizations are being challenged to rethink how they support their people, manage knowledge, build relationships, and prepare for long term success. So, could you explain, please, what a quality driven organization looks like today, especially when so many teams are now working from home or across different locations?
Well, as you said, this is a challenge because look, I don't preclude people working from home. I think we've now and especially with technology, we have the ability to do that. But we just need to be careful that we maintain a focus on our people and their most important resource, which is their knowledge. And also, with that knowledge, there's very important ingredient in all this. Knowledge is developed and nurtured through mentoring.
Mhm.
And generally, that mentoring can really only come to being when you're in an office or when you're or with your within a workplace working side by side with your peers and your fellow employees. And I think this is where it becomes very challenging. Now, I think, and I do know, I have actually done a number of organisations that have grappled with this, and they grappled with this during COVID when there was a number of extensive lockdowns and where people basically were forced to work from home.
Yeah.
Now, um, it became quite apparent from the organisations that were really switched on, where they were using the mentoring process exclusively and to very much to their forefront of their organisations in challenging learning and ongoing knowledge, not only just retention, but ongoing knowledge challenge and growing of that knowledge, of
Mhm.
people's personal knowledge. Now, I have seen a number of organisations that basically have downsized their workforce from all working at home, where some of them particularly the people that spend most of the time on the roads and so forth, on the road salesmen and people like that, right? But there has to be a time when where there needs to be a focus where everyone comes to work, and that way then you spend that time on mentoring and doing that personal one-on-one learning,
Yeah.
right? And I think this is critical within the workforce.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have seen it done very well, and some people do it quite badly, but the ones that do it really well are the ones that have a relatively small office complex, and basically on one of the bigger rooms they have a massive TV screen, and basically everyone that is working from home is
Can see.
is available on that massive screen. So
Mhm.
they can hear the people talking in the office, they can hear the people at home making their phone calls and so forth. And yes, and that there are ways of doing that, but even they have said that there are regular occasions, and generally that most organisations make it to a point where one day a week everyone comes into the office where you can have that banter, that camaraderie,
Mhm.
getting together and
I agree.
expanding your knowledge one on one.
Yeah, I agree that it's really critical and it shifts the conversation away from simply having the latest technology and back toward people, knowledge management, and creating an environment where people can actually perform at their best. So, building on that, Ian, one thing people often underestimate is how much the environment around them affects performance. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes businesses make when they focus too heavily on technology or systems, but then forget about people development, engagement, and knowledge sharing?
Yeah, well, I guess just following on from from when we last spoke about that,
Mhm.
and even just now when we're talking about working from home and things like that, I think this is where we need to ensure that when people are working from home, their office environments or wherever they work from basically have to be a safe environment. Okay. And even simple little things, and this is something I do concentrate a lot on when I'm doing my audits, when I walk around the offices and see people sitting at their desks. And one of the first things I always look for is the line of sight from a person's eyes to the screen. It
Mhm.
has to be in a direct line. You can't have them looking up or looking down at the
Mhm.
screen. And that's the first thing I always look for. And quite often, people say, "Oh God, I forgot to put the number of magazines under my laptop to lift it back up again," and so forth. And I immediately put it right. And I always remember a funny instance where I was interstate and I'd walked upstairs into one of the offices where there were a group of engineers. And anyway, I thought the guy that said good day to me, he looked to be sitting in a very strange way in reference to his desk and his computer. And I was just about to say something as I was walking towards him, and he stood up, and it was like, oh, wow, he was so tall. It was just unbelievable. But the point I made to him was, are you aware of the stand-up desk where you can adjust your desk
Uh-huh.
to the height of the person?
Mhm.
And I emphasised, I said, your Sydney office has one of those. You should get onto the phone virtually straight away and get one. Because he would have been well and truly 6.5 foot tall.
Oh.
Very, very tall young man.
Uh-huh.
And it was interesting. The next time I went to do their audit, he had the stand-up desk. And look, some people like standing up and
Yeah.
working at their desks, right?
Mhm.
But leading on from that, the other things you need to look for is make sure that around their desks is tidy. They don't have loose leads and things hanging around on the floor
Mhm.
because, and I've seen it where people have got up and they've literally tripped and fell because they have caught themselves in an extension lead or something like that. So that's a very important thing that we need to actually be aware of is that, and there has to be this culture where people actually get up in the morning and actually go and have their breakfast, see their children off to school or whatever, but then they put themselves into a routine where they then do their work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, again, a funny instance where we were looking for a home in Sydney, and anyway, the estate agent said, "No, no, that's fine. You can go upstairs and have a look at the bedrooms." And then, so straight up I went, and the door was open, so I walked in. Oh, and the lady was actually lying in bed working on her computer. And I said, "Oh,
Oh.
look, excuse me." And she said, "Oh, no, no, don't mind. You can come in and have a look at the cupboards and so forth." And I just casually said, I said, "Oh, you're working from home?" And she said, "No, no, I've always worked from home, and quite often I don't get out of bed. I just stay in bed and so forth." And that message has always rung in my brain as to
Mm-hmm.
that is the worst possible thing you can do, because you can't sit correctly at a computer in bed. And but it wasn't for me to say that to her, of course. But those things often ring true. And when I went back down and I mentioned this to the agent, he said, "Oh, sorry, I did forget to say that the lady would be in bed." And I said to him, I said, "Well, if you'd said that, I wouldn't have even bothered to go in."
Uh-huh.
But anyway. That's the thing, and
Yes.
that's where we do have to be very careful to work through this and make sure, okay, happy for you to work at home, but not all week. We
Uh-huh.
will need to see you 1 or 2 days during the week to get that camaraderie and that mentoring ongoing.
Yes.
And yes, but those are the things that you have to be prepared. And sometimes you've got to be hard on yourself, because when you're at home you tend to relax. So
Yes.
in some respects, you've got to work at it to
Mhm.
remind yourself, well, hang on, I'm still at work at the moment, and and things like that.
Yes, and I agree. I can definitely relate to that, Ian, whether it's in business, sport, or even parenting. The tools can only take you so far, but without the right support, mentoring, and engagement, it's difficult for anyone to reach their full potential. And that naturally brings us to culture and leadership. What are the biggest warning signs, Ian, that tell you an organization is not actually built for sustained success yet? And should organizations be paying closer attention to corporate governance, ethics, principles, values, and culture than ever before?
Yes, and I think this is where we've tend to walked away a little bit from this. And again, I think it comes from the COVID era, and people now, quite many of them are beginning to work from home, and we're losing this corporate governance and keeping our eye on our culture and the way we do things, the principles, the values, and the other key ones that are coming to play now also rule of law, primary duty of care, and chain of responsibility. Now, when we talk about chain of responsibility, that tends to get lost when we're working from home, right? And and this is where I'm now actually concentrating a lot with my audits, and particularly with the two new ISO standards coming out. Well, they're not new, they're revised, but the
Uh-huh.
quality and the environmental one. And there's a lot of conjecture within the industry saying, "Oh, there's so much that you're going to have to do, um, and there's so many more things you've got to look at." And basically, what I'm saying, no, what we've got to go back to that governance structure.
Uh-huh.
And again, I look at how we cover that off, and a lot of my organisations are doing the same. They're beginning to refer to the Global Reporting Initiative's Corporate Sociability Standard, which works into and works through corporate governance, works through those key areas of ethics, principles, values, and culture, and also very much now beginning to concentrate a lot more on the rule of law, um, um, just mental black at the moment,
That's fine.
primary duty of care and chain of responsibility.
Mhm.
And basically, that's where, when we introduce the new standards, that's where we will look very extensively through that process. And that's where the organisations that have really got that switched on are really coming to bear. Now, one of the key things I'm beginning to look at with an organization is their corporate governance framework. Okay. And when you talk about culture, ethics, and values, and you think yourself, well, hang on, particularly when you talk about ethics, and quite often when I hear people, oh, so there has to be an assessment on the ethics. No, there certainly does not have to be an assessment on ethics, but you have to look through how the organisation fits in within society, within its own community, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the organisations that have this really nailed down beautifully are the ones that work within the community. They may be supporting one of their children's football teams,
Yeah.
right? And they're one of the organisations that know actually hire out a bus for them so that they get from school to the
Mm-hmm.
sporting ovals, do their sport, and then they come back to school, right? But there's lots of many other different ways, but that's how an organisation fits in, shows that they're fitting in with society, right?
Mm-hmm.
With people out in the workplace, in other workplaces. And so that's what I now like to see is particularly on their websites, where they put up on their websites
Yeah.
who within the community they're supporting.
Mm.
And, and another organisation I know is a big donor to the Veterans Association
Mm-hmm.
and returned servicemen, and they're concentrating a lot at the moment in reference to not just rehabilitation, but managing mental health through additional training programs, learning, even the provision of dogs where
Yeah.
they've lost their mates often in the field. They come home
Mm-hmm.
and they never lose them. As you know, with me, I carry my smoker
Yes.
on my shoulder
Smoker.
and so forth, and even my mum and dad, right? But they need someone to come into place, right?
Mm.
And dogs are often the world's best therapy, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
again, this is where you look at how the governance and the corporate governance of an organisation now is going to be looked at even stronger. And I had an organisation I did last week where they said it makes it so exciting for them to be involved within the community, right? And they gave me an example of how that then works back the other way. They actually have people within the community going around selling them as one of the best people in the business for moving asbestos within the workplace, which this
Mm-hmm.
company does, right?
Yeah.
And you can walk around and you can drive past the school, and one of their corporate sponsors is this organisation, so they have a little advertising blurb. And it was interesting. I was sitting on the train going back home, and a lady sat not far from me in an opposite seat, and she had the name of her organisation, and we got to talk about it. And I said, it's lovely to see that you have a uniform. You're openly able to talk about your organisation, the good things and how they support community and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And this is where, within what we talk about the corporate governance,
Yeah.
how that can then be translated and then displayed within the community. And I think it's a very, very important thing. And this is where we will be concentrating a lot more on.
I think that's something many leaders also don't always see right away. Some things could look good on the surface, say numbers, but culture, trust, and engagement often reveal what's really happening underneath. So, speaking of trust, organizations today, Ian, are relying more than ever on external providers, specialist partners, consultants, the fractional leaders, and distributed teams. How important is relationship management in today's business world, and why is ISO 44001 2017 collaborative business relationships becoming such a relevant conversation, especially with hybrid and work from home setups?
Well, it's key. It is actually key. And one of the things that I have noticed doing this series of a quality organisation is that as we've gone through this journey, we have spoken about a number of different standards. Now, a
Mhm.
lot of people, when you talk about TQM and quality management, people only think about the one standard, the 9001 2026, the revised one just out. And I
Uh-huh.
always say, well, no, not really. What about health and wellness? And that's where
Yeah.
the occupational health and safety standard comes in. What about environmental? That's the 14001. And then we talk about competence management and things like that, the 10015 and 10018 standards, right? Now, also when we're talking about risk, we talk about the 31,000 standard, right? So they all come under the umbrella of understanding a quality organisation and what makes it actually tick and what makes it actually relevant and effective within a
Mhm.
community.
Yeah.
And, as I said, we talk about knowledge management, internal assessment, partner selection, right? So when you're looking, for argument's sake, the organisation may be looking for a training provider, right? You can't just take the first one you see in the book and things like that. They actually have to be able to demonstrate to you their culture, their ethics, their values and principles align with your own. Because if they don't align with those four or five key elements, sooner or later you'll end up with a separation, right?
Mhm.
Now, I always say to people when we're talking about employees, it's always advisable to have your own employees coming up the rung of the ladder, right? Being trained internally, knowing everyone within the business, rather than, for argument's sake, if a person gets to the point, oh, look, I'm not growing fast enough, I can't do enough. And again, I've had this just recently where someone basically I thought was well and truly climbing up the ladder, but they've decided no, they weren't. So they're now all of a sudden they're up and leaving, right?
Mhm.
So now you have to fully retrain induction and onboard a new person. That's
Yeah.
quite an expensive and costly exercise.
Yeah.
So this is where we talk about the collaborative working relationship standard, right? So everyone is part of the team, so to forth. So it's your stakeholders, your training provider, and things like that. It can even be you can have a person or an organisation looking after the employment requirements, legal requirements of all your employees. So they can be form part of your team, right? But again, they need to come under your umbrella of your culture, principles, values, ethics, and
Mhm.
again, all managed within the corporate governance profile of the organisation. And look, this standard is clearly shown within our system on our website.
Yeah.
And if people would like any guidance, they just have to pick up the phone and we can point them in that direction.
Mhm.
But it is a very, very good standard, and it also challenges businesses when they're looking at the collaborative working partners. They often forget their own people.
Mhm.
And that's the number and
Valuable
the
point.
most important one that you need to be looking at
Mm.
and ensure that you have that covered.
Yeah, right. Because success today isn't just about managing what's inside your organization, it's also about how effectively you collaborate, share knowledge, and create value with others outside your business as well. And as we wrap up, let's look at the bigger picture, Ian. How are standards like ISO 9001 2026 and ISO 14001 2026 evolving to help organizations become more sustainable, people focused, and community conscious in the real world while still maintaining quality, competitiveness, and long term success?
Yeah, well, we touched on this just a few seconds ago. And yes, and I think the biggest changes are going to be accountability, understanding foremost and right up forefront is the point where we are all accountable and organisations are accountable. For argument's sake, as a business, we are accountable for our environment, right? So
Yeah.
it's up to us and all our people to ensure that when we do leave, when we go up above, okay, not only will we continue to be involved with our siblings and even our employees in our soul, right?
Mhm.
But we have to be in a position where we know we have to do the right thing. We can't just pay lip service to, for argument's sake, and the environment is the classic one, but there's also a very key importance with the quality standard as well. When you're working to produce a product and you're getting rushed and to meet the business targets, and then you get rushed more to continually increase them to the point where you begin to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Collectively, as people of an organisation, we have to be prepared to speak up and say, no, we're going too fast and we're making mistakes. So products go out that aren't fit for purpose. Now, if we look at the environment, and this is very, very core to the new standards, is accountability. We are all responsible for the environment, and we look at energy resources, right? And I often say to people when I walk around the office, and they might have half a dozen meeting rooms and so forth, and often I'll go into a room, there's no one in there, and it's obviously hasn't been anyone in there for hours. And I'll come back out and say, look, is this room being used? Oh, we only use that once a week. And then I say, well, why is the lights on? Oh, it's an automatic, the lights go on, but automatically they don't go off. So I
Uh-huh.
say to people, it's a very cost-effective process to putting lights, movement switches on, so that when you walk into a room, the light will automatically come on. When you walk out of the
Mm-hmm.
room after a period of time, it then switches off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is again, people say, oh, that's such a small initiative, Mr. Erskine. And I say, no, you'll be surprised how much energy you will
See.
use as an organisation.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often I'm staggered when I visit different cities around the world, and it's just like a Christmas cake. Everywhere you see, there's skyscrapers, 30, 40 um, tall, and every level is lit up by lights. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Surely you would understand that you would have to have a red flashing light right up top for planes and navigation, but you don't have to have every single light on. And I think collectively, as a population around the world, this is one of the things I think we can do so much more on in reference to energy use, switching lights off when they're not being used.
Exactly.
And then people say, "Oh, yes, but what about people breaking in and things like that?" And I said, people break in regardless of whether the light's on or the light's off.
Yeah.
Number one, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a security. Again, security is another issue where
Mm-hmm.
you have to be responsible for your own security of your premises. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example of that. And this comes under the quality standard and health and safety.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working within a town and you might be doing a street, right? Now you have stop and go, but also you have fenced off areas. And again, this is I speak from experience. This was in the middle of Sydney. One of the main streets was being upgraded to run trams. Anyway, so they had the work site situated. And anyway, so I went to walk across the street and I thought, it's strange, it's fully open, anyone can walk in there. So I kept walking, and then I thought, and my mind said, no, stop and go back and ask them to close the gate so that someone doesn't walk in, because it could be someone that walks in to create mischief, right? So I went back in and went to the tool shed, knocked on the door, and the Fed said, oh, what are you doing here? And I said, well, the gate's fully open. I can just walk in. Oh, we forgot to close the gate. Yeah, I'll come with you and close the gate. And I said, look, just be careful. And he said, yes. He would bring that up the toolbox to make sure that that was something conscious that you had to remember to make
Mm-hmm.
sure you pulled the gates fully closed. And I said, look, even if you put a lock on that,
Mm-hmm.
and so people can't get in. And obviously, then you need to have somewhere that they can contact you, your phone number or your place like that. And yeah, so again, we're going back to the governance issue. So that, again,
Yeah.
this is a governance issue. It can't just be found by one person. One person just can't make that mistake and then either correct it or forget about it. Because as I said to this young man, I said, well, obviously people would have walked through this gate to get to work,
Mm-hmm.
everyone, right? And that's what I'm saying. And this is one of the things I say to business leaders is that you must have people within your organisation to be able to come to you, not with a problem without a solution. They have to be able to come to you to give you an answer. And by simply saying, look, we have an issue here, but I do have an answer how to fix it. Can we do this, please?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get things done.
Yes. And that sensor activated light, Ian, is a really great idea. It's clear also that organizations become future ready by investing in their people, creating
Yeah,
environments where knowledge can thrive, building meaningful partnerships, and of course, remaining conscious of their responsibilities to the wider community. So,
yeah.
thank you so much again, Ian, for helping us better understand how all of these work together to create stronger and more sustainable organizations. This practical approach, it gives everyone plenty to think about, I'm sure. It's a pleasure having you here again.
Yes, well, just before I go, I just want to let everyone know that there's going to be a very, very exciting addition to ACI Global
Uh-huh.
and coming up in probably a little over a month.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'd like people to remember the one word hemp, HEMP.
Uh-huh.
Do a Google and it's 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 really really exciting of what we can achieve by getting to understand the benefits and the usage of hemp.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Okay.
something, just take that on
I'll
board,
better
Miles.
Google that later after this, and I'll text you. So, as usual, we're dropping all the helpful links below if you'd like to learn more about ACI Global, ISO Personal Certification, ISO certified courses, the ACI Global 360 Professional Development Review or the PDR profile, and how your organization can become ready for ACI Global certification. They have plenty of resources to help both individuals and organizations, and you can also check out this episode on their website as well. That's another insightful conversation here on X Rays with Ian Erskine. Until our next one, this has been your host, Miles. Stay focused, driven, and inspired with X Rays.